I like to think I had a little bit to do with the 14 countries policy change, but I have to say that, the bulk of the credit, which I think is really a credit, goes to the President and Secretary Napolitano, who really worked hard on that set of issues. So thank you. I was going to start off by saying that you can blame me for all your airport trouble, but I decided not to say that because I'm not sure I can handle what will happen next. So I'm going to start differently. Thank you very much for having me to this important conference. It's really a privilege to be here and to follow that very vigorous call to action for all of you. I'm really pleased to be on this panel besides. So what Dr. Anwar has asked me to do is to talk about the work of my office, the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. And so I'm going to do that and talk about what we do and how we work to build partnerships with different communities across America as part of the Homeland Security mission to secure and protect America and make it more resilient. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to start, though, with two quotations from President Obama, who did me the honor of appointing me to this position in January. And these are two quotations that I keep on my desk as inspiration as we carry out what I think is really a hard but doable job to protect civil rights and civil liberties while simultaneously protecting America. So here they are. He said, "We will not succumb to a siege mentality that sacrifices the open society and liberties and values that we cherish as Americans, because great and proud nations don't hunker down and hide behind walls of suspicion and mistrust." And then the other one, he said, "We uphold our most cherished values not only because doing so is right, but because it strengthens our country and it keeps us safe. Time and again, our values have been our best national security asset in war and in peace, in times of ease and in eras of upheaval." So I take those quotes very seriously, that it is the liberties and values that the President was talking about are, to sum them up, liberty and fairness and equality under the law. And sometimes people talk about balancing those against security, but my perspective and the perspective in those quotes is a little bit different. In my view, liberty and fairness and equality under the law are the features of American life that we are trying to secure. So Homeland Security is in part about securing liberty and fairness and equality under the law. And so they are not in competition. They work together. Security doesn't compete with those foundational values. It serves them. And so I think of my task as making sure, doing what I can to make sure to see that happens. So let me talk to you about what that means. And I should say, when I say I don't just mean I, although this is my own personal inspiration I'm talking about. This is foundational in the Department of Homeland Security. It's in our foundational statute. Congress told us that we should carry out, and it listed a whole set of missions. And then after the list of the whole set of missions as item G, so it's eighth, right at okay, now you've got all those missions, that's all the stuff. The eighth mission is do all that without diminishing civil rights and civil liberties. And so that was the instruction from Congress, which set up my office as part of the department when the department got stood up. So how do we do that? We call my office CRCL, by the way, and I might fall into that DHS habit of using acronyms rather more than I should. So if I call it CRCL, that's what I'm talking about. So what do? Well, we think of our work as having four pieces. We are part of the headquarters office of DHS rather than being in the components, and I'm considered part of the department's leadership, and so both I and my staff, and I've got a staff of about a little bit over 100 right now, and it's growing quite fast. We play what I hope is a key role in advising personnel from kind of top to bottom of the department about civil rights and civil liberties issues, so that we can make sure that those perspectives are included in policy decisions and in implementation of those decisions. So this covers the component agencies most importantly. So it covers TSA and ICE, the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, and USCIS, the Citizenship and Immigration Services. So we do a lot of policy work. We do a lot of, is that policy, is it constructed the way it should be constructed? Does it have the right kind of oversight? Does it have the right kind of redress? Does it have the right kind of narrowness so that it impacts the people who it should impact but not broader than it needs to? How is this working? Do we always get that right? No. No. If we always got it right, we could retire. We could just set it all up in policy, and then we could all go home. But we try. And so a big chunk of what my office does is that policy work. A second thing that my office does is that we are a communications office in part. We communicate with individuals and communities whose civil rights and civil liberties may be affected by department activities. And we tell them about policies so they can get good and solid information. And we tell them about avenues of redress. And we try to hear from them to promote appropriate attention within the department to their concerns and experiences. So this is work that we do with American Muslim, South Asian, Sikh, Somali communities. It's also work we do with other communities. I should be clear. This is not work that's only done with American Muslim communities. We work in a variety of communities to try to reach out to people who have issues with the Department of Homeland Security. That's how we pick it. People who have things that they do that are affected by the Department of Homeland Security. So right now, I've got staff who are working very hard on making sure that work being done in the Gulf is appropriately accessible to people who don't speak English. So language access is a civil right under the laws of the United States. And so they're working very hard with Vietnamese shrimpers in particular. So we reach out to a variety of communities. We do a lot of work in a whole bunch of places. But we do a lot of work in, as Dr. Anwar said, we do a lot of work in this community, in the Pakistani American community, and in South Asian, Muslim, Arab, Sikh, Somali communities taken as a whole, and sometimes not taken as a whole, sometimes pulled apart. Another thing that we do is we investigate and resolve civil rights and civil liberties complaints filed by the public. And I should note here, just because I'm always looking for help, that we are currently engaged in a comprehensive review of that complaints process. And for those of you who have, I don't know if any of you have worked with our process at all, if any of you have any views on it, but if you do, now's the time to tell us about it. We have an open and new email address that's taking people's complaints about our complaint process so that we can try to, and not just complaints, hopefully suggestions as well, so that we can try to make it better. And that's trying to cover things from access to effectiveness, timeliness, and so on. So if you want, you can write to CRCL improvements at dhs.gov, and that's where the line that we're using. We've had a couple of big NGO meetings to try to do that, but we're also taking emails for another couple of weeks on that. So that's another thing that we do. And finally, we are the adjudicative piece of the department for a certain portion, and I won't go into the complicated administrative regulations that make it just a certain portion, but for a certain portion of the equal employment complaints that come out of DHS employment. And we run a chunk of that process. So, so those are the four things that we do. So that's all a little, that's at sort of 40,000 feet. Let me bring it down a little bit, down to maybe 10,000 feet. How do we do all of that? Well, we have 7 sections. We have a division. We have 3 subject matter sections. We have a section that deals with immigration. We have a section that deals with disaster preparedness, and we have a section that deals with intelligence, security, information sharing. And those are our 3 subject matter sections. We then have 4 groups, 4 sections. And those are the ones that do the bulk of the policy work. Not all, but the bulk of it. And they go to meetings where new policies are being developed and other ones implemented, and they work on a variety of things. We also have 4 what we kind of think of as activity-based sections. One of those does training. One of them does a certain kind of in-depth analysis of existing programs to see if those programs can be improved, to assess the impact on civil rights of those programs. So right now in that particular one, we've got an ongoing impact assessment, they're called, of laptop searches at the border, which is a topic of interest to some people. We have also, did I already say training? I did. Complaints. We have a complaints section, and finally we have the section that leads our engagement activities. And so while I'm pausing to talk about the engagement activities, I'd like to give a shout out to Jenny Presswalla, who's from my staff, who many of you know, who's one of the members of that group, who's done great work, I think. So, so what have we done recently? I didn't notice when I started. How am I doing on time? 2 minutes? Goodness. Okay. So what have we been doing recently? Well, we participated in the 14-country policy and have been helping implement what's replaced it, which is a much more individualized kind of a screening technique. There are still screenings, perhaps